The vast majority of Fox News' on-air personalities either totally ignore Donald Trump's authoritarianism or openly celebrate it, except liberal Fox News commentator Jessica Tarlov, who continues to relentlessly fact-check Donald Trump and expose his corruption and his authoritarianism to her MAGA co-hosts, even though they don't like it and it triggers them. And we have to catch up with that. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're checking in once again with Jessica Tarlov, who, again, in my opinion, has the hardest job in legacy media. She goes into Fox News. She's outnumbered 4-1 on the 5. They constantly heckle and interrupt and do everything in their power to derail her. But even though she's outnumbered, she is never outgunned. And she has been on the authoritarian nightmare that is Donald Trump's deportation, his unlawful deportation of Kilar Abrego Garcia. And she's bringing the facts to a venue, to a network, and to a viewer base that might not otherwise hear it. So we're going to play these clips in which she pisses off her MAGA co-host by telling the truth, and they do everything in their power to stop her, but they can't.
An MS-13 guy. Let's be very clear about this. The accusation of being MS-13 is based on a double hearsay testimony. They never followed up with it. And a detective who weeks later was indicted for sharing confidential information. His legal status, Abrego Garcia's, was approved by the Trump administration in 2019. And every year since then, he has checked in with the Department of Homeland Security. And nobody has said anything about him being a gangbanger.
Until he was?
No, not until anything.
He became a prop.
To this day. It's not about being a prop. There will be other senators that are looking into these because it is reported that over 75% of the people that were on that plane have not been convicted of anything. And the
So, I love it, and I love the passion she brings. I mean, she's clearly concerned about this. She's pissed off about this, and again, notice how they can't refute the facts, right? They can't refute it. So instead, they try to heckle and interrupt, and that's really all you get from Greg Gutfeld and quite frankly, even Dana Perino, the former President Bush White House press secretary. She's not quite as overtly MAGA as Jeanine Pirro, Jesse Waters, or Greg Gutfeld, but she's also a colossal disappointment because she does nothing to, even bring some sort of sense of moderation. When it comes to critiquing Trump, she either heckles along with them or she stays silent. I mean, she just refuses to do the right thing. Here's another clip of Jessica.
It is reported that over 75% of the people that were on that plane have not been convicted of anything. And the American public understands the difference between being deported and being sent to a foreign prison where they don't get a phone call. Okay. They don't get to talk to their lawyer, their wife.
Somebody who's been killed by an illegal alien.
If we have a mass murderer in maximum security American prison, they have more rights than the people being sent there for a lifetime sentence.
How did they get here?
Right.
Okay.
So again, a couple of things. This idea, well, undocumented migrants have murdered people. Yes, and that's wrong, and those people should be punished. But in the United States, you are still afforded due process. And by the way, Kilar Abrego Garcia didn't murder anybody. So even if I take everything you say at face value, it still doesn't deny the fact that due process is afforded to any resident in this country per the Constitution and per centuries of Supreme Court tradition. And number two, the man who has been, cruelly, authoritarianly deported to an El Salvadoran gulag didn't murder anybody. So again, a total bullshit, nonsense talking point from these MAGA cultist losers because they can't deal with the fact that Jessica Tarlov is smarter than they are and has the facts on her side. Excuse me. So here's another clip.
And that's what's going on here. And people are paying attention to it. I think that it is very clear that the public outrage over this and the fact that a U.S. senator showed up there has put pressure on Bukele and on the Trump administration. Because before, while they were, lounging around the Oval Office, patting each other on their authoritarian backs, saying, ha, 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 build more prisons.
Where's the outrage? What outrage?
The
public outrage?
Yeah.
What? You're just reading news blogs, Jessica.
You think that the Supreme Court saying 9-0 that his return has to be facilitated, you think this Fourth Circuit opinion written by a Reagan appointee saying this should be shocking?
That's not public outrage.
Yes, Greg, I'm not just getting this off of some junk on my phone. If you look on the front pages of all of the major newspapers, if you look at every newscast and what they're leading with, it's this story. And you say you always pick one person. You say that to me frequently, and then I come back the next day with someone new. When I said there's a 54-year-old American man that was taken into ICE detention custody. Oh, one guy, he got returned, no big deal. Then I talk about Andre, the gay makeup artist, who, by the way, still has not been convicted of anything, and we don't know what's happened to him.
Going down there to try to get
well,
him?
someone should, whatever
But why would Chris Van Hollen, though, pick this guy?
But
why do you pick the MS-13 guy and not the gay makeup artist?
This isn't an MS-13 guy.
So you see it like even Dana Perino right there. Well, why not pick that one instead? They constantly move the goalposts. And I love how Jessica's calling them out on this. You say you talk about one person. Okay, so I bring another person. Then you say it's another person, right? So the examples are irrelevant because the more examples she provides, they just simply never concede. Oh, that's one person. Oh, that's one person. And there is polling on this. Yes, it is true that overall the American people do favor the deportation of undocumented migrants. You can agree with that or not, but that is reaffirmed by the polls. However, if you poll people about due process and should people be deported if they've been in the country for 10 years or if they have no criminal records, then support for Donald Trump's deportation and immigration policies drop precipitously. This idea that he has a blank check to do whatever the hell he wants and to send people unlawfully to El Salvador and gulags is bullshit. There's no polling basis for this. But again, Dana Perino, well, why not pick him? Well, again, you say that he's an MS-13 member. You have no evidence to substantiate that claim, number one. And number two, Jessica's right. People should be going to El Salvador more frequently. Senator Chris Van Hollen picked Kilar Abrego Garcia because Van Hollen is a senator from Maryland. Kilar Abrego Garcia was a resident of Maryland. There's a connection there. And I totally agree. Democratic lawmakers should be going down there and continuing to put pressure on Bukele. But again, I love the fact that she's exposing that they constantly move the goalposts, that they can't deal with the fact that she's just right on the merits. And so that was from the most recent episode of The Five last night. Here's one from a few days earlier on a similar topic.
Abrego Garcia, there is no proof that he was an MS-13 member, and it has been debunked many times.
It's been debunked
yes, it
by
has.
liberal
It was
newspapers.
That's not true.
In a court of law,
Stop.
Section I-113 or 123 is reliable, verifiable proof that you were a member of a gang, and he was never able to rebut it.
It was based on double hearsay testimony and also a detective who was indicted merely weeks later for providing confidential information to a sex worker. He was also allegedly an alcoholic.
So again, the idea that Kilar Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13 has no substantiation to it, none. And you would think that given the headaches that this has created for the Trump administration, including a 9-0 Supreme Court decision, that they would at least provide the goods, right? Okay, if you have the goods, show us the goods. And even when Fox News reporters repeatedly pressed the Trump administration, from Caroline Leavitt to Attorney General Pam Bondi, they failed to produce the goods because they don't have the goods to produce in the first place. It's just that simple.
Got into this. But the point is that this man has been living in this country, out in public, meeting on an annual basis with his DHS caseworker. He goes in once a year. He talks to them. They know where he works. He's an on-the-books worker. This is not somebody who is a gangbanger. This is not somebody who has committed any other crime besides being here in this country. And he came here also based on credible threat of being murdered by a gang at home who was threatening his entire family. The reason that Democrats are talking about the fact that anyone could, quote unquote, be disappeared is that you can see a full-blown constitutional crisis playing out in front of our eyes. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that he had to be returned. President Bukele is lying when he says that he can't get him back. We know that he can return people because he returned people from the original shipment. There were women that were sent there, and he said, oh, no, you shouldn't be here. And there were some Venezuelans that he didn't want. He said, okay, you shouldn't be here.
Again, she just brings the facts. They have nothing to contradict her. The fact of the matter is Bukele lied. There's no ambiguity to this. There's no, no. Bukele is effectively a dictator. He actually refers to himself as the coolest dictator in the world. He has seized extraordinary powers. He actually sent members of the El Salvadoran military to the El Salvadoran legislature to pressure them into legislative outcomes that favor him. He's an authoritarian and a dictator. Of course he has the power. He could do it within 5 minutes. He could have done it in the White House. He could have said, you know what? Yep. You know what? We're definitely going to, in order to normalize relations with the United States, we're definitely going to do what the Supreme Court says. Let me pick. And he could have called right then and there. And in 5 minutes, Kilar Abrego Garcia would have been walking out of CCOT towards a plane to send him back to the United States. Of course, Bukele has that power. There are no constraints on his ability to take people out of CCOT. He just didn't want to because he wanted to own the libs and help Donald Trump own the libs. It's a flat out lie. The reason that liberals are, yes, concerned, progressives are concerned, quite frankly, anybody who is sane about this should be concerned, is because of the precedent it sets. As the Fourth Circuit The judge in the Fourth Circuit, a Reagan appointee, noted, and we did a video about this, the premise and the predicate of the Trump administration's claimed authority, the authority that they're claiming to do this, could effortlessly be used not just on American citizens, but specifically on their political opponents. There's nothing that would prevent them. Oh, we accidentally sent an American citizen. We accidentally sent an American citizen who is not only not a criminal, somebody that we disagree with politically, but they're already in El Salvador. We can't do anything about it. There's no limiting principle to this, which is why any sane person should be concerned. Here's another clip.
I think that it's funny getting that hot mic moment where Donald Trump and the El Salvadorian president are talking. They're kind of loitering around at the front of the Oval Office where they're joking about like, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could take our homegrown ones? You cannot legally send Americans to an El Salvadorian prison camp, no matter what they have done. Senator Kennedy was on our air earlier this afternoon with Sandra and John and said as much.
Okay.
You look at, one more thing to say. Actually, multiple more things to say, but what is most important is that under the Alien Enemies Act, you deserve due process. And that's what the Supreme Court ruled. And if you go back to World War II, when we were invoking this same act, that people who were here undocumented from Japan, from Germany, from Italy, were allowed to go into a court where they could argue that they weren't a danger to this nation. Abrego Garcia was not afforded that right to come into court and to argue as to why he should not be deported.
She's right. The last time that the Alien Enemies Act had been invoked prior to Trump doing it here was the Second World War, the biggest, most explosive war in the history of human civilization, an actual declared war, by the way, in which Congress did formally declare war against the Axis powers. There is no declared war against Nicaragua, Venezuela, anybody here. So Trump is at the most charitable interpretation. And I would argue it's actually uncharitable in the sense it's giving Trump too much credit, too much good faith that he doesn't deserve, or too much benefit of the doubt, I should say, even then, there was due process. There was just due process afforded. And that's why we just did a video about this, but the Supreme Court, once again, it wasn't a 9-0, it was 7-2, ordered the Trump administration to stop the deportations, to halt deportations, even if only temporary, under the Alien Enemies Act, because apparently due process is not being afforded. So, there's so many more clips that we could provide here, but again, Jessica does such a really good job. She has a really, really difficult job. I don't envy her. Even when you're as smart as she is and you have the facts on your side like she does, to be outnumbered by very comfortable people who recognize that they have a home field advantage. They are on Fox, and Fox viewers love them and hate her, and they outnumber her 4-1. It is very, very difficult. Very few people could do what she does as well as she does it. That's why I say she's always outnumbered, but never outgunned. And speaking on this particular issue, because, tariffs and Trump's economic mismanagement are certainly more politically salient in the sense that the public is turning on Trump, right? So it would be easier to prosecute the case against Trump because the terrain is more favorable. Jessica Tarlov is going to a slightly less favorable terrain in which, yes, public sentiment is slowly turning against Trump, but it's not as universally impactful to most people. It should be. Because, again, it's not just the case of Kilar Abrego Garcia, which is bad enough. It's bad enough, the individual instance. But it is the precedent that it sets for Donald Trump to disappear others, to disappear me. I'm a natural-born American citizen. Not only am I not, I'm not an undocumented or documented. I was born here. I was born here. But I'm also somebody who criticizes the Trump administration. What is to stop them from putting a black bag over my head, putting me on a plane, and sending me to El Salvador, and then afterwards going, okay, sure, Josiah did commit a crime, and he's not a documented or undocumented immigrant. He's an American citizen, but damn it, we just made a mistake and he's already a CCOP. What can we possibly do? That's the danger. And again, on principle, anybody should be opposed to that. But the other thing is there's a chance that a Democratic administration will eventually succeed this. What happens, MAGA, really, especially if you hate and fear the Democratic Party and the left because you think they're the fascists and the authoritarians, do you really want to set this premise? Because what's to stop a particularly ruthless and fed up Democrat from doing to you what you have equipped Donald Trump to do to other people? Let's not go down this road. This is stupid. Everybody in one voice, with one voice, should be in staunch opposition to this. And sadly, we're not. But thank God for Jessica Tarlov doing what she can to persuade Fox News viewers that this is truly insane, because it is. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.